Hello friends! I just finished reading all of the Jane Austen novels and I'm so excited to be finally making this video. A new Emma film was coming out, I think in March, and I decided that I wanted to read the book before going to see the film. And then after reading Emma, I was like, why not read the rest of her books? So I actually read them within a month-and-a-half time frame. Previously I had read Pride and Prejudice and Northanger Abbey, but I read the rest in a month-and-a-half and it was honestly like the best time ever. Truly, that month-and-a-half is what inspired this whole new love of classics that I've developed this year, and I owe it to Jane Austen. I'm so excited to finally talk about my favorite, my least favorite, and I have a lot of unpopular opinions, so I'm ready.
Up first, we'll be discussing the most well-loved and iconic Pride and Prejudice.
Pride and Prejudice. This is probably the most well-loved and cherished of all of Jane's novels. I just want to start out by saying that the movie ruined this book for me. I am obsessed with the 2005 adaptation of this book. It's a masterpiece. The actors they chose for the characters, the way that the relationships are portrayed, the cinematography, the score, it's literally perfection. Nothing beats the film for me. I really did enjoy it, but I did feel like my expectations were too high and they were not met. However, this novel does have some of the best characters of all of Jane Austen's novels. Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth. The chemistry and romance and tension between them is so good. And I love that we see how what matters in relationships isn't money, it isn't title, it isn't success or sex or lust or physical attraction or even love, because the way that you see Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth develop this respect and deep concern and care for each other seems so much deeper than just love. They have this really deep respect for each other and it's so beautiful. Mr. Darcy is just like, I mean, to be honest, like a butthead in the beginning, but then he has such a soft side. He's just literally the best, and it's easy to understand why he's like the heartthrob of the literature world. Jane Austen does typically have talk about society and gossip and backstory about families and history, and that was present in this novel, but not as bad as it is in some of her others, so I do think it is pretty easy to read. The ending scene from the movie just didn't live up to like the ending part of the book, and I was so sad about that. But I still really liked it, and I rated this one number 3 on my list. So this is my 3rd favorite Jane Austen novel.
Next up, we have the unforgettable and amazing Sense and Sensibility, and I just have to say that the film adaptation of this one is pure gold. I love it so much.
I wanted to love so much, and I loved the first half, but the second half just fell flat and was pretty bleh for me. Sense and Sensibility is about the 2 Dashwood sisters, and they are pretty much polar opposites. Their worldviews and their opinions on virtue and love and life are just complete opposites. And it's more about their relationship and how they handle life and love differently, more than the focus being on a very intense romantic relationship with the men that they do come to interact with. What I loved about this one was the setting. They are from a not so rich family and they end up living in this cute little quaint cottage. It's so picturesque and aesthetic. I also loved the relationship between the 2 sisters and the way that it focused on their relationship. And for me, their relationship was better than the romance relationships. Edward Ferrars is one of the leading male characters in this one, and I did find him to be quite dull. He just wasn't as interesting and fun to read about as many of Jane Austen's other leading men. And to be honest, he frustrated me quite a lot. I don't love when novels drag out frustration for too long, where there's a problem or 2 people just aren't talking when you know they should be talking, and it was hard for me to relate to the characters in this one. However, our other leading man, Willoughby, I absolutely loved him and he was really fun to read about. He was very interesting and I loved the chapters that focused on him. And while there wasn't as much gossip and talk about history and society and families and history and backstory in this one, I did find that the plot dragged quite a bit towards the end, and that's one of the reasons that I didn't rate it as highly as well. And I just really didn't ship the relationships, the romantic relationships I should say, into this story. I loved the sisters, but I wasn't rooting for the romantic relationships in this one as I was, say, in Pride and Prejudice or Persuasion. This is one of, is it Jane's? No, it wasn't her first. This is one of her earliest ones. You can kind of tell that she hasn't quite gotten there yet. It has a lot of elements from her other novels. It just doesn't do them quite as well. So I put Sense and Sensibility in 5th place. Next, we have my second favorite, which is Northanger Abbey.
Northanger Abbey was actually the first Jane Austen book that I ever read, and I love it because it's just pure fun entertainment.
Oh, I love this one so much. It's a parody of Gothic literature, which I think is so fun. I love Gothic literature. I read Dracula. I love that stuff, and I think it's so fun to see Jane Austen's take on it. She's so funny and is so witty, and this is probably one of the most entertaining of her novels. So if you're looking to read her shortest book and her kind of most fun and fast-paced and entertaining book, I would recommend Northanger Abbey. It's about our main leading lady, Catherine Morland, and she's 17 years old, and she's obsessed with Gothic romances. Like, she has dreams and she just daydreams about being in one. And then she takes a holiday, she goes to Bath, and she meets some new friends, and Henry Tilney, who is one of my favorite Jane Austen leading men. He is so funny, so like flirty and cute and adorable, and I love him so much. And while she's there making friends and meeting people and getting acquainted, she ends up going to Northanger Abbey for some time. And while she's there, she's envisioning vampires and all sorts of crazy ghosts and stuff happening in the night. And then of course there's a bit of drama, but yeah, I loved it. I loved everything about it. It has some characters that you just love to hate, and then it has characters like Henry Tilney that you just love and adore. Also, the age difference between Henry and Catherine is not as dramatic as some of the other novels like Emma, and she's not marrying her cousin like some of the others. So if you're kind of put off by age differences or marrying a cousin, which did happen a lot back then and it was normal, then I would also recommend this one as well. Also, the movie adaptation, I think it's the BBC one, has Felicity Jones and the dude from Austenland. It's so good. I watched it a few weeks ago and I have rewatched it again like twice since then. I don't know, it's just so fun. I love watching it. And a tip that I would have for Jane Austen novels would be, if you are kind of struggling or new to reading classics, start the adaptation a few chapters into the book so that you can kind of get to know the characters and the setting and kind of what's going on, and then pause the adaptation, read a few more chapters, then maybe go back. I've done this and this has helped me really keep track of who's who, because there are a lot of characters in Jane Austen's novels and it can be hard to keep track of who's who and where do they live and who were they acquainted to and what's going on. So I would recommend doing that. If not, just watch half the adaptation before reading the book so then you're familiar with the characters. That would be a great way to help yourself kind of be a bit more immersed and understand it better. All right, coming in at 4th place, we have Persuasion. This felt like Jane's most mature, lyrical, serious novel. It's about our leading lady, Anne Elliot, and she's 27 years old and still not married. Oh my gosh, she's gonna be a spinster. She was proposed to 7 years prior when she was 20, but her family persuaded her not to marry this man, Captain Wentworth, who she loved because he didn't have a good enough title and connections and all of that stuff that was important. But then the novel takes place in the present time when Captain Wentworth has come back from, I don't remember where, war or something, I don't remember, but he comes back. Basically, they come back into interaction and there's this tension because she declined his proposal and he was very hurt. He loved her and he didn't understand why she declined. He was just very heartbroken. And there she is like, oh my gosh, I said no to this man that I love and now I have to see him in person again and I still have feelings for him. And so the amount of tension between them, every scene where they're in the same room and they swap glances with each other, like the tension is real. But the reason that I didn't like this one as much is because I just didn't relate to Anne as well. You kind of see through these that my ratings kind of go based on who I relate to the most, what love story I relate to, or what character I relate to the most. So I really liked the Gothic literature part of Northanger Abbey and I loved Catherine. Like I just related to her well. Anne I don't relate to as well. Like the whole time I just wanted her to go up to Captain Wentworth and be like, I love you and I'm so sorry that I did that. I wanted her to say her feelings, and because of that I did feel a bit frustrated the entire time. I was like, just tell him. So it's not that this wasn't as good of a novel, I just didn't rate it as highly because I just didn't relate to it as well. However, it is very beautiful. They go to the seaside and they're traveling through the countryside. It's also one of the shorter novels, so it's a bit easier to read. I absolutely enjoyed it. There wasn't too much unnecessary gossip and backstory again, and the scenes where they were in the same room or they accidentally bump into each other and there's no one else there and it's awkward, and I thrive. However, the ending was, I mean, in the literature world, the letter that Captain Wentworth writes to Anne is so beloved. People refer to it all the time as one of the most romantic letters ever written. So that was completely worth it in the end. It was just absolutely stunning. Read the whole book just so you can read the letter at the end. So now on to my least favorite. You can probably guess we only have Emma and Mansfield Park left, and I'm gonna be basic like others and say that Mansfield Park was my least favorite novel.
To be fair, I did rate all of these books over 4 stars, so it's not that I didn't enjoy this one, it's just the least of my favorites because I love them all.
I started reading Mansfield Park and I was kind of getting into it, but I wasn't super into it, and I wanted to see how the characters looked, so I put on the adaptation and I was like, how was that? At the beginning of the movie, it actually says based on the novel and journals written by Jane Austen. So yeah, they kind of took their liberty with it. I ended up watching the entire movie and I loved it so much. Then I read the book and it was very, very different from the movie. And since I fell in love with the movie and Fanny Price in the film, yeah, it was just a bit of a letdown. I didn't like her as much in the book. She was a bit more soft-spoken. I didn't like many of the characters in the novel, and I just didn't really like the plot. It just was very bleh for me. Nothing wowed me, nothing really stood out. I didn't absolutely die for the romance, and the ending wasn't like some of the others like Persuasion and Pride and Prejudice that have these amazing romantic endings. It wasn't like that, and yeah, I just felt a bit let down. So that leaves us with my number 1 favorite, you guys, and that belongs to Emma. I am obsessed with Emma. So Emma is the most privileged. She's spoiled, she's a bit entitled, she loves to meddle in people's lives, and her favorite hobby is matchmaking. If you've seen Clueless, it is an adaptation of Emma. When Jane Austen wrote Emma, she said that she wanted to write a character that only she would like. I'm gonna have to side with Jane Austen because I adored Emma as a character. Yeah, she's spoiled and rich, but to me she was the most relatable of Jane Austen's characters. She isn't a damsel in distress just waiting for a man. She's difficult, but she's also so lovable. I just love that she's flawed and real. Whether you like Emma or not, I think it's kind of undeniable that she is the character with the most growth. She is just so well crafted and we see so much character development. And oh my gosh, Mr. Knightley, don't even get me started on him. I could talk about him forever. I love him, I'm obsessed. I would marry him, except for I'm already married, but you know. He is one of my favorite. Darcy and Henry Tilney and Mr. Knightley, they are my 3 favorite. I adore them. In the book, he is a bit older than Emma, but we just don't think about that. I pictured him as the Mr. Knightley from the new 2020 Emma film adaptation. I love the way he talks to Emma like they're best friends, because they are. Their relationship is based on their friendship, so it's a friends to lovers story, which is one of my favorite tropes. Because they're so close already, whenever Emma's acting out or being a bit immature, he tells her how it is, and I absolutely love that. They aren't afraid to just come at each other and be like, hey, you're wrong here, which is the problem that I had with Persuasion, right? I wanted them to just talk it out, talk their feelings out, always just talk it out and work through things, and they're always stronger afterwards, and I just love them so much. Also, the ending with Mr. Knightley and that whole scene, I love it. I would say this is also one of Austen's most entertaining and fun and hilarious and silly and outrageous novels. It's up there with Northanger Abbey in that aspect. I also adore Emma's dad. He is so funny. He's hilarious. And I will say I started the audiobook for Emma and I was struggling with it. So what I did was I went on Audible and I got one of the dramatizations. I think it was 8 hours long, which is still long for a dramatization. And after listening to that dramatization, then I went back and listened to the audiobook for the entire book. So I would highly recommend listening to the dramatization of Emma because it is really long. A lot of dramatizations are just like 2 or 3 hours, but it's 8 hours. So you do get the bulk of the book. You get the voices for all the different characters. The girl who does Emma's voice is great. She's amazing. And then also the 2020 film. I watched the old film with Gwyneth Paltrow and then I watched the new one, and I do like the new one the best. I feel like it represents Emma the way that Jane Austen would have wanted her to be represented. And I mean, I realize that I'm just going on and on, but I'm just obsessed with Emma. Emma and the film are just what changed my whole perspectives of classics because I found myself loving that dramatization, the audio that I listened to so much that I decided, hey, I'm gonna read some more classics and some more Jane Austen novels, and my mind was just open to this whole world of classics, and I owe it all to Emma and honestly to that dramatization that I listened on Audible because that's what changed me. I read one classic a month before and now most of what I read every month is classics, if not at least half of what I read, and it's all because of Emma. So that's definitely why Emma is my number one. I saw so much of myself in her, the way that she's just outspoken, she does what she wants, she doesn't live her life waiting for a man or relying on the rules of society to govern her. She's like, I'm gonna be a spinster. I'm not gonna get married. I'm gonna live at home with my dad. Like, I have more control in this house than I would if I got married. Like, I loved the way that she just didn't give in to what was societal norms. She was just so out there and it's so fun, and I could just go on and on. I really could. So those are my favorites. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I do have some tips if you are wanting to get more into Jane Austen. I would recommend watching the adaptations as you read or starting them right before you read. If you're new to classics, there are adaptations for every single novel. Also, I would highly recommend the audiobooks. I know some people are not audiobook people and that's totally fine. Also, with Persuasion, I actually read chapter summaries after reading each chapter. I would finish a chapter and be like, okay, I kind of got what was going on, but then there's this blog that I found and it was for a book club and they had chapter summaries for every single chapter, and it really helped me get a grasp on what was going on. Another tip would be to just pump yourself up and hype yourself up about the books, watching reviews and reading reviews, watching some of the adaptations, just like hyping yourself up and getting yourself excited, maybe listening to some of the scores from the film, like making your life aesthetically in line with some of the books. At least for me, like that's kind of, as you can see, like I kind of like matching my books. It just gets me more into the world and into the vibe of the book. I think those are all my tips. I hope that that was helpful. I would love to know if you've read some of Jane Austen, what is your favorite novel or your least favorite? I would really love to start a discussion down in the comments because I know there's so much debate about her best. I know tons of people love Mansfield Park and it's my least favorite. If you've never read Jane Austen, I would highly recommend picking up one of her novels and giving it a try. So yeah, I hope you guys really enjoyed this. I hope you have an amazing day and I will see you in my next video. Peace out.